Welcome to Easily Entertained, a show dedicated to appreciating all the best parts of entertainment. My name's Bryson Olson, and I'm a filmmaker and a lover of all forms of storytelling. Here I will bring you along as we critique and analyze stories with a more positive take on why we enjoy them, and bring a new appreciation to the world of entertainment. Welcome back to Easily Entertained. I'm your host, Bryson Olson, here to talk to you about all things entertainment. Today, we are talking about The Fall Guy, a new sort of comedy action movie that stars Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. It was very, very fun. I got to see it Saturday, so about 2 weeks after it was released. It was super fun. I loved it. It's kind of like a bit of an homage to stunt doubles, as stunt people usually get put through a lot of hard work and don't usually get a lot of recognition for it. So it was kind of putting on some shedding some light to that, while also telling a really fun story from it. And kind of the story they were going for from the beginning was almost kind of sort of a detective kind of story, like a buddy cop detective kind of story. You're usually mainly just following one person, but as you're kind of going along, you're following Colt Seavers, who is a stunt guy in the movie. His character is a stunt man, and they're on like a film set. But so his double has disappeared. The actor that he stands in for is gone. They have no idea where he is. And so he's put on the task to go try and find him, to save this movie that his former like ex-fling sort of thing that is. So they're the director, and Colt is trying to make sure everything's in order because it's their first big film. And so it's kind of like this little detective story with a bunch of fun action because they're stunt doubles, so they know how to actually fight or take a hit. And I don't know, it's just kind of fun to watch. Kind of detective story within another story, because there's still like a lot of comedy in it. I find that Ryan Gosling actually fits pretty well with the comedy side of things. It kind of depends, though. I feel like he could be a little too overbearing sometimes, but in The Fall Guy, I don't think that's really the case. He's still, for the most part, fairly, not exactly serious, but not super goofy either. He has his goofy moments, but for the most part, he's like, I know what I want. And I kind of like that, because you're not getting too much of the goofy. You still have them kind of taking themselves seriously, even if the premise is a little bit goofy. So you have him going throughout this little detective thing, and you get some fun interactions with like a drug dealer, his former ex, not Colt's ex, his double's ex or his girlfriend or whatever. And then you find out that they killed somebody and they're trying to hide all of this stuff. And so you're piecing all everything together. And that I kind of like. It's fun hearing those kind of things as you're going throughout the movie and being like, oh, this is what could happen, or this happened because this is happening, and so many other things. And I like sort of how they kind of feel like a puzzle sometimes. I don't know if I think I've talked about it on this before. I really like puzzles. And so getting to kind of piece together parts of a story like a puzzle is usually pretty fun for me. And I really liked that about The Fall Guy. It was, kind of fun. Showing my love for, the mystery and kind of piecing everything together. And I think a lot of people love that. And speaking of love, I know, great segue. Let's talk about the love story behind this film, which I think is really funny and kind of like realistic. Like they do end up like kind of happy together. And I feel like in stories, that's kind of usually the case. But this is like a happy ending that could actually happen. Because basically in the love story, the stuntman, Colt Seavers, he gets in a bad accident during a stunt. He breaks his back, and as he's going through recovery, he doesn't really want his fling to have to deal with him. And so they kind of break things off, not like officially. It's more like they kind of just go silent, and they just don't talk to each other anymore. But because of that, we're kind of going through the story, like thinking, okay, well, maybe they'll get back together. And that's the whole point of the story, is like they're trying to get back together, and he wants to get back together. And that's why he's going through all these hoops, like a stuntman would, to actually solve the love affair in his heart. And I find it fun. So it's like how they get together is a pretty like believable scenario. They're both on a film crew. She's a camera operator, he's a stuntman. She becomes a director and he's a stuntman for her production, which, seems like pretty logical kind of industry relationship where they're kind of overlapping and they're around each other a lot. So, it makes sense. And then you also have, like, so when they break up, it kind of makes sense, and they're like, I don't know if I really want you to deal with this. We haven't been together very long. And that can cause some strain in the relationship. So while his mindset was right, he was wrong in how she would have felt. But then they're getting back together, working on something together. And she's kind of like, I don't really want him to be here. But they still try and be professional, but then they get closer and they become friends, and then they're like still falling back in love with each other. And I think it's something very realistic that you can see in actual people. Some people, they may break up due to whatever reason. Maybe it's not because they don't like each other, but just circumstances make that happen. And then they end up back together because that's how they like each other. And I think that's really fun, and I think it's good to appreciate those kind of love stories as well, and not just like, oh, it's the over the top, they're all over each other, or you have the major breakup and everyone's super distraught, but rather a more kind of realistic and understandable love story. I think we need more of those kind of love stories in films and TV and stuff like that. I just think it's fun. I think as someone from the real world, I like seeing those kind of real world love stories a little bit more. And then let's talk about the big thing about this movie, which is, of course, the stunts and the stunt man appreciation. Because, like I said at the beginning of the episode, people tend to kind of disregard stunts a lot. You hear about it sometimes when like a Tom Cruise movie is coming out, like, oh, Tom Cruise did pretty much all of his own stunts, which is always super cool. And it's interesting to have a movie that focuses on those kind of stunts and being like, oh, this is the behind the scenes of how those things would happen. People are lit on fire, how a car roll actually happens, how people get thrown from buildings. And there's just so many things like that, they're very dangerous, but it's interesting to put the audience in the perspective of, oh, this is what it actually is like. And they do a good job of actually showing it. I believe the director, David Leitch, I think that was his last name, L-I-E, Leitch, I think. I cannot remember how to pronounce it. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. And if you ever see this, I'm so sorry. But he was a stuntman before he was a director. And so they're clearly wanting to show off a lot of the stunts and the behind the scenes and the real hard work that goes behind it. And even if they're telling kind of a funny story of a stuntman going on his own action adventure to solve a crime, it is still focusing a lot on the stunts, on how stuntmen can do a lot of things, and they go often very underappreciated. Like the idea that this stuntman can go off and try and find his double. They kind of say it multiple times. They're like, oh, you're a stuntman. They won't really notice that you're gone. Whereas, like, it still would definitely affect the production. And they show that kind of as a more dramatic example in this because of the love story. Like, yes, they will notice that he's gone, but like people would still know. It'd be other people on the stunt team, other people on the production crew. They would know that people are gone. And it's just kind of an interesting, like almost stereotype that they're kind of like, well, like who cares? Because it's just a stunt guy. And so I kind of like that they use that to shift the perspectives by the end of the movie, being like, oh, stunt guys should be noticed. They should be thought about. They can do a lot of crazy things and they're really important to an end production. And I think that is awesome. And they showcase it in the credits as well. Like there's like maybe 50, I didn't count them all, but there was a lot of stunt men and women, coordinators. There's a whole lot of them. And I think it's just fun to see the appreciation for it, especially as someone who wants to go into the industry. I haven't ever done stunt work. I knew about stunt work, but it wasn't like a huge thing that I thought about. But they're used everywhere. Pretty much anything where an actor or actress could be potentially in danger, they're going to use a stunt double. And I think it's just interesting to get the appreciation for that. I kind of love it. It's something I love about the filmmaking process, seeing how even the tiniest roles, even assistants, do a whole lot to really affect the end production. I thought my mic was moving for a second. But yeah, that was Fall Guy. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. How long did we go today? It was kind of a shorter episode. I kind of apologize for that. I'm in a new space. I'm back in my parents' house. And so I'm kind of getting back into the groove of things. We've been kind of setting up a new little sort of mini office area because I don't have my nice office in my apartment anymore. So, you know, if you're listening, you probably don't notice hardly anything. But if you're watching, like a lot of people do on my YouTube channel, go check it out. The Easily Entertained podcast. It's a great time. You know, we'll kind of just go with the flow. And hopefully soon the setup will be a bit more permanent and it will be pretty nice. So before we leave, let's do our rating of the Fall Guy. And I would personally go probably with Quotable. Not only do they kind of say some really funny things, but they quote things in the movie several times. Like they quoted Rocky, Fast and Furious. There was another one, I can't remember exactly, but they did quote several things, and that I find pretty enjoyable. And I think that kind of is a pretty good way to fit it into Quotable for our rating. Because even though like it's still a pretty good movie, like obviously like it's still kind of corny at some moments, but still a pretty good movie. So I think Quotable is a good thing to put for Fall Guy. And before we leave, final thing, the question of the week, and what is the coolest stunt you've watched in a movie? And it's a hard one for me. It would probably have to be Tom Cruise climbing the cliff in one of the Mission Impossible movies. I can't remember which one, but I think that one is just so interesting because I remember the first time seeing it and hearing about like how he did it for real and how Tom Cruise is just someone who does a lot of his own stunts like that, which is just crazy to me. If I was an actor, I don't know if I would really care to do that. And once again, I'd need to be very appreciative of the stunt doubles for taking the risks and making it look super cool. But yeah, that's probably the one I'd have to pick. So let us know either in the comments on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, wherever. What is the coolest stunt that you've watched in a movie or TV show? And with that, that is the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Easily Entertained. If you did, be sure to subscribe or follow so you can get notified of the latest episodes, and check out our social media on TikTok and Instagram so you can get notified of all other entertainment stuff that we do. It's usually a good time. And with that, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye! You have been entertained.